This is Question Time. My name is Mpho Tsedu. Today we're coming to you from Mandela House Museum right here in Soweto, Vilakazi Street. As you would remember, this is the precinct that housed at least two world-renowned leaders and Nobel Peace Prize laureates, Desmond Tutu and the late President Nelson Mandela. As today's show is in honor of President Nelson Mandela, let us firstly have a look at this insert.
Today marks the first anniversary of the burial of former South African President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Mandela is without doubt the most celebrated South African president to date. His contribution to the liberation of South Africa has played a big role in the way many South Africans are able to live their lives today. During the apartheid days, Mandela opened up his home to other freedom fighters, a fact his family members still remember and revere about him. To mark the anniversary of his passing, this is what people had to say about Tata Madiba.
If he had a chance to come and tell us of what to do, he would say, you know what, move forward and learn from me, although we miss him very much and greatly.
We are free today because of him. Today, we have access to education. We've got access to health. It is just good, to be free. Because today, you don't have to carry a dump-pass wherever you go. You see, everyone is free. Everyone has got a free, a free way of socializing with anyone without any problems.
Life hasn't been the same. That's the first. He has left a huge mark. He has left a huge gap. I think we still miss that leadership that he provided to us. A lot of things seem to be a bit not going according to what we know him to be standing for. So it has basically moved a little bit back.
Dignity to live. I think that sums it up. He has given us the dignity, the right, the passion to live. That has been his best contribution across the world. I come from India, so who knows better than us? I've come with my friends, so just the dignity to live.
He didn't carry any hatred in him because, as he quoted, he said, hatred. If he still had hatred, he'd still be in prison. But because he got over it, he got out, and he actually forgave everybody, and he changed the country. And he did his best to try and make the best for everyone. And he didn't think about himself. He was a very humble, kind man.
Our President Nelson Mandela has left a huge legacy. I remember as a young boy, I remember the protests. We lived near Luberta, and I remember the bus protests and the people walking to work. I was a young boy at the time. It was frightening, but now we have liberty, freedom. I'm able to come here. And I also remember our president when I met him about 5 years ago, the most humble man. I met him at a function, but he had a strong handshake. And also my daughter was born the year that he came out of jail. And he actually passed away on her birthday.
Ik geloof me, ik is een kapst. Ja, ik heb een paar bezig. Kom.
In Parliament, Higher Education and Training Minister Bladen Nzimande has conceded that the bursary scheme is not enough to meet the growing demand from students.
Funding for universities is not enough. to open about that. We will continue to ask for more from government as a department.
We've always said that the NSFAS budget must be 16 billion rand and that no qualifying student must be prevented from studying just because they cannot afford to do so.
There's been concern about citrus exports to Europe and investment contracts.
There are more opportunities for us to sell sugar, wine, ethanol, some fruit products than we had before, and that could create jobs.
That's Business News, weekdays at 6 p.m. on SABC News.
Zoom into Africa. This is South Africa. The president is Mr. Jacob Zuma. South Africa became a republic in 1960 and attained democracy in 1994. The population is more than 50 million people. One of South Africa's major languages is English. Monetary unit, the rand.
Here we are, we've left Vilakazi Street in Soweto, that is the Nelson Mandela Museum. Right now, we are here at the Nelson Mandela Foundation and the Center of Memory, where I'm going to be talking to the Chief Executive Officer of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Ntate Sello Hatang. Mr. Hatang, welcome to Question Time. It is 1 year on, and I guess a lot of people had expected that because Madiba is no more, then you're going to close shop.
Thank you very much, Mpo. You know, it's interesting because we had this conversation a year ago.
Yeah.
If you remember, I was in studio. Yes. The same question about, are you going to close shop? And I think when Madiba established the Nelson Mandela Foundation, he had longevity in mind. You remember that it was in this building in 2006 when he retired, when he said, "Don't call me, I'll call you," or 2004 when he said, "Don't call me, I'll call you." He then expressed the wish to have a Nelson Mandela Center of Memory. And that Center of Memory was going to be doing work that's not of a mausoleum. So he didn't want a museum here. Hence you see that people who come through have dialogues in this place about difficult issues that we're dealing with in the country. And one of the difficult issues that we're dealing with is the issue of racial prejudice. And it's something that we are now working on. And that's something that we'll be working on for the next while. And as a result, you'd see that for most of the projects that we do, they have that longevity in mind. So we're not closing shop soon.
So what are we going to be seeing, different, which you were perhaps doing when the old man was still alive, which you're now not going to start doing?
Well, the foundation has to remain relevant. And we have just adopted a 5-year strategic plan. This strategic plan is focusing predominantly on young people, because we believe that young people feel alienated at the moment, that with the levels of inequality and unemployment that's hitting them hard. Yes. Is that you then have a situation where you do need to address young people. Yeah. And the 5-year plan will be dealing with that. And I suspect that in the next 3 years, the foundation will have to again review the strategy and say, how do we become relevant and remain relevant to address issues that affect our people at the moment. So the foundation will be dealing with issues that we call issues of social justice. Yeah. Which are difficult to deal with, for us to create a safe space for people to be able to say the unsayable. And we cannot ignore the issue of, for example, the issue of inequality. Yes. That I was talking about, and those are some of the issues that we'll continue to deal with. Why do we believe that we should continue to be doing the work that Madiba left off with us. Some of the stuff that you saw when you were here the last time, and I include completing a book project, for example. Madiba started writing a sequel to Long Walk to Freedom, which he never finished. So we'll continue to do those projects that were close to his heart that he couldn't complete.
So at what point would you say, the foundation is now detaching from Mandela the person into Mandela the philosophy or the principles,
That's a good question, because we always have to rethink, reimagine ourselves. And one of these parts of reimagining ourselves include what Madiba said in 2008. Remember that in 2008, when he was in Hyde Park, he said, the world remains beset by so much human suffering. It is in your hands to help build a different world that cares, and it's based on that that we're doing the work that we're doing. In other words, we're no longer only about the man.
Exactly.
But about the work that Madiba left behind. And I think with the complex nature of the legacy of Nelson Mandela, we always have to do the reimagining work. You can't not reimagine the work that you're doing.
Has it been an easy one?
No. I think with Madiba's legacy, there's nothing that is easy. It will always be difficult because you have contesting voices. You always have the need for you to project Madiba, who goes beyond just the how we deified him, that we made him the saint that he was saying we shouldn't. So that kind of work can be easy because you always have to go against the tide and say that these are some of the things that Madiba was uncomfortable with.
Has it been easy to basically move from Mandela the person into looking at Mandela the philosophy?
The difficulty that we have is that you find that with Madiba's legacy, it makes it easier to understand for people when they do that, when they make him a saint, because then it makes him even unreachable. That was Nelson Mandela, whereas for example, the democratization work that we must do in South Africa needs us to then be human and promoting good governance, promoting a corruption-free society, where violent crime, for example, we frown upon and do something about it. And it's only when we do that that we imagine ourselves as human, and Madiba as such a human being. And I think if you look at some of the work, and I hope that we'll be able to show you some of the work, you can see that there are letters, for example, in his letters, Madiba would be writing to his children in '69, where he's talking about to both Zeni and Zinzi, and saying to them that he knows that they are heart sore that he's not home. But that he is looking forward to the day he can spend the rest of his life, the remaining days of his life, with them. That's 69. Madiba still had 20 more years to go. But that didn't dawn on him to then lose hope. He said, I'm well, I'm hoping to do that. So there's no need for us to not also have hope that we'll build a country of Madiba's dreams. And that question that Madiba said should bother us all the time is the question of what am I doing to help build a country of our dreams? And that's the question that we should all ask ourselves.
Hold it there. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll continue our discussion with the Chief Executive Officer of the Nelson Mandela Foundation and Mandela Center of Memory. This is Question Time.
There's an explosion of studies showing that cannabis causes or is related to schizophrenia.
I have been using cannabis almost daily for the last 30 years.
If it had no side effects and it had no harmful effects, we wouldn't have been sitting here.
If cannabis was going to cause me brain damage, I really don't think that from a personal point of view that I would be sitting here today.
The fact is that you cannot just do what you want.
Watch Newsroom with me, Evan Janssen, weekdays at 9 a.m. on the SABC News channel.
Leaders of Lesotho's governing coalition have advised King Letsie III to lift the suspension of parliament.
I just want everything to go back to normal and to see the parliament opening again.
We'd like to feel safe in our own country. That's the only thing we want.
9 men have been arrested in Mpumalanga by Specialized Police Unit the Hawks. The suspects are believed to be part of a drug smuggling syndicate in 3 provinces. Police say they are part of 22 drug runners that sell cocaine and other drugs in Gauteng. The men were arrested in Evander near Secunda.
Who was that one person that taught you or led you to the point that you know that words can inspire change?
My grandmother. When I told the family that I wanted to be a writer, everybody rebelled against me.
What do you think your contribution and your band's contribution has been to our landscape as we understand it now?
We had to sing songs that are encouraging, you know, and songs that are saying, let's stand up and do it ourselves.
That's Morning Live, daily at 6 a.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest today is the Chief Executive Officer of the Nelson Mandela Foundation and Nelson Mandela Center of Memory, as we mark exactly a year when the late president was actually buried down in Qunu in the Eastern Cape. Now, Mr. Atang, welcome back. It is indeed exactly a year since the mortal remains of Tata Madiba were lowered down to the ground and soil of the Eastern Cape village of Qunu. Just take us through that period, you know, the moment you established that he was no more. You know.
I think it will be true to say that even though that we knew that the day was coming, it didn't make the shock any less. It didn't make the pain any less. And I always say that Madiba, in fact, said that the loss of a person such as him is made the greater because you have a family, not just a family, the Mandelas, but a greater family of South Africans in the world, which lost a great soul on that day. And I think reflecting back on that day, it would be true to say that for us, we thought we were ready. Okay. Because we had put systems in place to deal with that moment. But when that moment came, it still hit us hard. But you still had to make sure that South Africans in the world got the information that the family and the government were putting through. So yes, so the day still hits one hard.
So here you are, you get the message. What was the first thing to do?
It was the online work, so the making sure that the website works. Making sure that when someone logs on and they want information on Madiba, they can get it. It included Madiba's biography, for example, making sure that people understood who he was and all that information. So it was basic information. That was the first thing that one had to do. The second one was, of course, informing our key stakeholders to say this moment has happened and this is where you can get more information in terms of websites. And and then of course to then say, how do we make it possible for South Africans to join in the family, with the family? Hence we then had events here at the center for people to be able to come in.
So what role did the foundation play in terms of, all the processes that we saw unfolding? The body had to lie in state, there were a lot of VIPs who were arriving in the country, in as much as we did see government playing a central role there.
Fortunately for that part, it was predominantly taken by the government, and we didn't have much to do, and in fact our hands were already full with people who were coming in, streaming into, and calling in, asking for information, those who wanted to fly in. You'll remember that most people who had contact with Madiba, particularly international personalities, would have come through the foundation. So most of those people were now calling, asking for information as to how they can make it to the funeral itself. So that ended up being the heavier part of the work that we ended up doing.
Come the memorial service day, FNB ready, and throngs of people came through, but then it starts raining. Thousands cannot make it, and you look at it, you say, okay, the rain is a blessing. But secondly, there probably could have also been a stampede, It's just one of those things where you look at and you say, yes, the memorial was a huge success, but at the same time it could have been even bigger and perhaps catastrophic.
Never thought of it that way, actually. But it's interesting because that whole week the weather was bad. And I remember that at some point we had to build a marquee because so that people could be undercover. And in a way, it's true that those who couldn't come through then could follow the events from their television sets at home. So I suppose I never saw the positive to it, that as you point out, that then the crowds could be controlled naturally. But I think it didn't make the impact any less, because you then had this a great African man, as you put it, that you then have this great African man who could be celebrated, but also with the blessings, as we believe that rain brings blessings. It's a signal of wealth, but it's what we do with that belief. Here's the wealth of his legacy that he's given us, that he showered us with. Now what do we do with that legacy is the question.
Did you find yourself playing a role which was really ideal? Because one would imagine that you have a lot of VIPs, VIPs who are VIPs in their own countries, and perhaps those who are also VIPs, in terms of their partnership with the foundation. Were you able to maneuver, their reception and perhaps deal with their expectations as well, if there were any, whereby they could have expected to play an even bigger role than they did?
Actually not. The people who came through, including people like Oprah Winfrey, who were here, the actors who were here, they came to the foundation, and I think all of us understood that it was not about us. Okay. It was about Madiba, and it was Madiba's day. And I think all of them also took it in that light. But I think what made it easier is that you then also had them being, the thing being organized easily for them to be able to be shuttled. So I think there was a greater name, greater purpose, and they understood the purpose.
There's a lot of expectations, finally, that the graveside perhaps could ever be open to the public. Is it something that we can expect any time soon?
No, that resting place remains the place for the family to make those calls, and I'm sure at the right time they will make the call on how South Africans can also celebrate Madiba through that site. So I suppose if we wait a little bit, I'm sure they will then make that call. And I hope that when they make that call, we will be able to then use that site as a site of reflection. He has a legacy that was lowered, but it doesn't have to remain there.
And perhaps lastly, Mr. Adang, the foundation will continue to be open to the public for how much and for how long?
We're going to always be open. It's free of charge in terms of admission to the center, and we're hoping that people won't stop today, being the 15th, the day that Madiba was buried, but they will continue to come to the center, to use the center as a place of reflection, as I said.
Slohatang, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was question time for today. A big thank you to you for watching the show, and to my guest, Slohatang, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nelson Mandela Foundation and the Nelson Mandela Center of Memory. Get in touch with us. Our email address, questiontime@sabc.co.za. Our Twitter handle, @questiontime24. You can also follow me on Twitter, @mpotsedu. From me and the crew, have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.